Hello and welcome to Faith and Honest Conversation, where me, Thomas Rowland, and James here,
Hello.
we get to, hi James, we get to, just try and be really honest about our faith and our experiences of faith and spirituality, and hopefully make it okay for you to have yours, whatever that may be. So James, we've come, as we semi-frequently do, if not always do, with no real idea in mind of where this is going to go.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, when we were,
And we still don't have any idea where it's going to go.
well, I did have a question or something that I thought we might talk about a little bit. There've been a few times when we've talked that you've mentioned power and it's sort of like the internal power of people and I think I might be sort of paraphrasing a little bit or sort of maybe getting the wrong end of the stick, but I was wondering if maybe you wanted to expand a bit on that and just sort of I think for me I've got quite a negative view of power and I haven't got a very healthy relationship to power, as in like I reject it quite a lot and maybe reject my own power and my own sort of like ability. But I just wanted to know, what's sort of like been your experience? Where's it stirred from in you, and where does that come from? The theme of power, I think.
Yeah, that's really interesting question, and I'd be interested to explore that with you as well, because I think I started my training being quite negative towards power. Like I remember, so my master's, the dissertation I did was on therapists' experiences of power in the counseling relationship. And where I was coming from that was I really struggled with holding any sort of sense of power as a therapist or as a counselor. And I naturally align myself in that sort of kind of those philosophies or those theories that seem to want to give power back to the client or have a more mutual equality or equal power. And it wasn't a therapist or counselor trying to take a place of power, like a pedestal, or like in a particularly vulnerable situation for another person.
So like a collaborative approach with the client and a recognition that you both got equal ability within the session to make things happen or not make things, or prevent things from happening to an extent. Less psychodynamic, more person-centered. Would that be?
Yeah, so I think I was definitely drawn to person-centered.
Yeah,
and definitely felt real hesitancy around the kind of traditional. I wouldn't want to say but yeah, certainly the traditional psychotherapeutic approach where, like, maybe you're offering interpretations or that could become giving interpretations.
yes.
And traditionally that was a white male giving interpretations. So and generally hiding behind a screen of they call it a blank screen, where you're not giving much of yourself away.
So it's like an expert and a novice relationship.
Yeah, and it was wanting to be objective, and it's in that sort of vein, I think, of science and wanting to be objective and rational. I think that's could be argued where it came out of. At least Freud, maybe other psychodynamic theories have different flavors. So yeah, but even like, I think I'd go so far to say that what really attracted me to person-centered was this sense that you almost give all the power to the client. Now, I think this is a misinterpretation of person-centered, but it's what I like. It's like, it's not so much a collaboration, but it's trying to almost be so non-directive that the client then just finds their own sort of power in that environment that you
sort of create an environment that's so reflective and so nurturing and so non-judgmental and freeing, like if not free because it's within the counselling context, but freeing for them to experience that level of empathy and love and compassion and non-judgment and all of those things that we kind of draw from person-centered. So from there, they that's like being in a greenhouse, I suppose, for a plant.
And that's because Rogers had a real idea or philosophy of humans as being good and having this what he called a formative tendency in them, that if you kind of have the right environment, this formative tendency comes and grows, and they develop in
very attractive, isn't it?
Trustable ways.
It's
lovely. It's a lovely idea. And I still really like it. However, I do think there was part of me that just didn't want to have any sort of power in relationship. So I guess maybe one way we can think about power is the ability to make a difference or to make changes.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't really want to, I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but as a counselor, but in this sort of sense, I didn't want to have power. Like I didn't want to be in, I'm trying to contrast it. It's like, or it's like I didn't want to impact the other person as another human. I wanted the environment to let the person grow.
Right. Yeah. So you were there almost just as an observer rather than an active agent.
Yeah. Maybe not an observer, but a sort of maybe a warm presence.
Yes.
Like warmth, maybe.
Yeah. Or, observer sounds very clinical and cold, doesn't it? Yes, whereas your present is much more real and in the moment, and but not necessarily actively directing or taking part in their decision-making process.
Yes. Yeah. And not being almost not being another person. I think I think there's I think there's an idea with dialogue in that you're encountering two separate people are encountering each other.
Right. Okay.
And in the encounter, they impact one another. Like they make a difference on one another.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And so this is the sort of thing that I struggled with. Like, could I bring what was going on inside of me and express that? Could I bring psychoeducation, so like CBT theory or other things? Like, I really struggled with any idea of psychoeducation because it was bringing something new, almost.
Yes, yeah. That might muddy the waters or cloud the session for the client or their process.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think part of that is, I don't know if this is wholly true, but it's like I didn't want to take responsibility. It's like the shadow, I guess, of that person-centered probably a bit false person-centered theory
Sure.
is that, you know, oh, it's all the client's fault then, you know, or it's all up to
Okay.
them.
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like, and I can be a nice smiley presence that's being empathic and lovely and accepting, but yeah. And I think yeah, and that was reminiscent of how, well, it was obviously very similar to how I was in relationship in my whole life. You know,
Right.
I
Okay.
like making choices were really hard. Like and just making a difference, or and taking responsibility or owning
Right.
responsibility
Yeah.
for my own life. Why are you
Just
laughing, James?
because it sounds so familiar. To the point I was writing about all of this morning. It's possible this is what we're absolutely supposed to be talking about tonight. Great. Sorry, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing.
No,
very
no, I
much with you.
understand.
Okay, yeah. You
Yeah.
can relate to that. They're not
Yeah.
willing to, or they're not able to take responsibility or make choices because then there's some form of blame or some form of onus on you in some respect.
Yeah, and I think you know, there was there is or still there. Like it's scary. Like when you
Yeah.
take responsibility for yourself, or when you take that sort of, or start to take that. I'm not saying I'm there in any way, really, but start to take that. It's you know, your actions have made a difference, and that's impacting the world and other people and relationships, and they've got to put up with those impacts.
Right. Yes, and it's something that they haven't necessarily chosen to experience or to receive. Yes, yeah.
And I've got to accept that that will have an impact on them. You know, they will have emotions about that.
Yeah.
That are valid and fair. And also will be mixed in there like they will be used to me being in a certain way and not being like this, so this is all a bit new to them, and that's quite scary for them as well. Like, so there's layers to this. Yeah, so I think it's that sort of, when I think of power, there is I think it's humanistic, maybe just person-centered, but probably humanistic traditions, this idea of the reclamation of personal power. And it's this sort of, I think it's this sort of idea. I mean, I'm not an expert, so
sure,
these are things I've picked up.
That's right. It's how you perceive it.
But I think it's the idea that, you know, you are largely responsible for your own life. Like the stuckness that you're in is largely because you've chosen things, or the same things, to be stuck. Or I should personalize that. Like, me feeling stuck where I was largely because I chose stuckness,
right,
because that was safe.
Yes, yeah.
Or
if you're stuck, it's not going to impact anyone. It's like, well, you know, what can I do? Type thing.
Yeah. So, or if my life is not, like, my career is not quite where I wanted it, it's because I chose things that have meant that, you know. And I mean, I was reading Yalom the other day, and he's very big on he seemed very big on this, and it's almost, he was saying, like, this is the whole point of therapy because if a client doesn't have any responsibility, then they can't make any changes. And so what are we doing? Just
right, you know,
so this is a really key part of
therapy, as an activity.
I don't know if there's anything else Yeah, and so, you know, for me now, it's like I've made decisions to organize my week in a way that I think I need a lot more, like with periods when I'm exercising or periods when I'm just in a coffee shop, like that sort of self-care sort of thing.
You built it in. You've
Like
made
I've
the
built it in.
choice
Yeah.
to include it. Yeah.
And with the idea that maybe then I'll be a bit healthier, and then
Right.
will be able to do what I want to do. And like, and I guess over the last few years, it's been a journey of, well, okay, like I want to be counseling. That's really important. I want to be spending time with my kids. That's really important. I want to be moving towards something that's basically not teaching.
Yes.
Like teaching is doing a great deal for me, and it's not awful, but I don't think it's where I want to be for the rest of my life. So, and just trying to making those choices, which obviously impact other people, and you know, have meant spending money and things like that. But yeah, so that there's that side. I think what I'm really still growing into, and I'm probably growing into that as well, but what I'm really still growing into is like in the moment sort of stuff. And this is where it comes back to kind of counseling and relationships, like in the moment, being able to be authentic, I guess, is maybe it. It's something about like and I think this is where it come back to the sort of dialogue thing, is that I can be a separate person and it's okay. Like I don't need to kind of be this empathic one with the other person.
Yeah. There is permission for you to be an other yourself.
Yeah. However I am at that point.
Yes. Okay.
And so person-centered theory would call that congruence, and I think that's a really important thing that can get missed, or has maybe got missed in the past, or in certain circles or whatever. But like it's being able to be aware of what's going on in us, or in me, and expressing that in some way, and not, you know, you can choose not to express it, and that could be a conscious choice as well. But yeah, and I think that's, it's like then giving yourself your personal power, like all that energy. Maybe it's anger, maybe it's fears, or sadness, or whatever. Like the energy there, an expression, or letting it be, rather than just being like, no, I've got to be kind, I've got to be nice, I've got to be okay, or whatever it is. That's which I still like. I find it difficult, but when I do it, I often find, I mean, always, I think I could say it's not as bad. It's not that bad. Like, and usually things that would have become big issues just fizzle away within a few minutes.
So like the fear of doing something is worse than the doing or something.
Yeah. And there's something there about, like, you spend a lot of energy trying to deny or cover up how you are. And I think that's been a real drain to, like, this idea of this sense of personal power, that I can make an impact, because I'm so exhausted. and so releasing some of that energy for other stuff, you know, kind of lets me maybe do more, maybe have more, make more of a difference, and
gives your brain more space to be you in other places, and more more authentic in other scenarios.
So I guess personal power, I'm thinking like it's my own responsibility for my own life, and the kind of unleashing the impact that that could be there, that I can have in the world.
You
know, which for me is really key when I've got kids. You know, I want to be like, I don't want to just, I don't know, like I want to be a really positive impact on them.
You don't want to be like, passive there.
No,
really, do you? You want them to know that you're there.
And I think there's something in relationships where you want to feel the other person. Like you want to feel, it's almost like you want to feel where they start or where you end.
I suppose it's like the key to connection, isn't it? Because like if somebody's, I'm just sort of going off on one here, sorry to interrupt you, but the like if somebody's there and they're just a warm presence and they're very empathic and you're really feeling heard and all of this sort of stuff, but you have no idea what's behind that. There's no real connection. There's no sort of sense of, oh, this is a person with flaws, with like great skills and great talents and great like sins and all of this sort of stuff. And they're this whole entity that is other from me. And so they're like, when we connect and we recognize, oh, this is somebody who's like me but not me, and I can and yet we can still relate. And there's a point. It's that point of contact, isn't it? That you're talking about, which you can't get if it's just I say just a presence, just a sense of a person. You have to be real. To be congruent.
I think so, and I think that contact is really important.
100%. Not just in counselling, just in all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. How does that hit you, James?
That's amazing. It's I kind of like my sort of follow-up question. It would be what started you off on that path?
Okay. I think very gradually I had experiences of people appreciating or valuing parts of me that maybe hadn't been before. So it was like, oh, maybe I do have something to offer.
Right.
However, so that was one part. I don't know if that's. So I guess that's a sort of self-acceptance or a
permission, isn't it? It's permission to accept yourself or accept those parts that haven't been accepted.
So I guess that's been part of it, and that's been, well, I guess if I'm being honest, it has been part of my whole life in different ways, like different parts maybe. I think what was key was be fair. Two things not going right in my life and my world, or two things kind of falling apart. So somebody close to me, they basically had a breakdown, and their whole life with their family sort of broke down. And somebody else close to me was really struggling in their way with church, and I was exposed to a lot of things. So I guess that sort of it questioned in my mind. It made a big question mark on my mind of the way that I thought life as always should be.
Mm.
Is that really the best way?
Yeah.
Like this doesn't seem to always end well.
Sort of like shook your worldview a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. Like, yeah, it did.
Yes.
And certainly, well, both of them, they felt like pillars in my world were crumbling.
Mm-hmm.
Or in my belief system maybe were crumbling, or worldview, or philosophy, whatever term. So so that brought a big sort of questioning, I guess, of just like, well, okay, what can I trust? Maybe.
Yes. Strips away some of the fluff around things.
And the sort of power, or the power in that sort of idea I thought was how life was, which was a lot about, maybe what I should be doing or ought to be doing, that sort of thing, or shouldn't. I think that probably had the biggest impact. And then therapy. Supervision / therapy. Which that's I know we've talked about a lot before, but
that's nurtured it, sort of nurtured that questioning, or that sort of like giving you permission, I suppose, and space to question and explore.
I think it hasn't felt like giving me permission or space. It's felt like somebody really wrestling me.
Okay.
But I think
it out of you.
like almost like in a way that I was agreeing with it, or like I wasn't against it, and I could always pull out. But in it, like that, and that's really where my ideas of like this dialogue and this contact sort of idea is, like somebody really questioning me on things, or really digging into things, and shaking things up.
Not
from a
letting
different
you just go, I don't know. No, you do. Come on, let's really
or your don't know is just part of what's safe for you.
That's it.
Like, shut up, leave me alone. I want to
know. You can't dodge this. I'm going to keep asking you this question until you answer. In a very non-empathic way.
Yes.
That's a different approach.
But I mean, the way I've experienced it is within empathy and within a real sort of I mean love for me, basically, like, and that they could also take it if I disagreed. Like it wasn't a possessive sort of thing or a fragile sort of thing. It was
robust,
robust enough, and so that's been a real, where it started was probably those two things, and then the therapy and supervision since.
It's sort of like continued it, and it sounds amazing, Tom, and it's exciting for me, because I think I'm probably still in the place that you were in before any of that you sort of started on that journey. Comfortable in my stuckness and in my uncertainty, and happy for my power to go unnoticed and hidden, probably for very different reasons, maybe for some similar reasons, but yeah, that it it does strike me as odd that that's what I was writing about this morning in my pages. Yeah, so glad we talked about it.
Yeah, I think for me when like when you talk about going back to counseling, like I'm like, yeah, do it, James, because I want that power in the world. I think I want you making that difference,
that impact. Yeah.
And I think
Makes sense.
there was one phrase I remember hearing. It's like from another therapist. It was like she was talking about setting up private practices and therapy, and one thing she had to get over is, and she was like the youngest of 4 or 5. It was like her voice never got heard or was never acknowledged or whatever. I'm the youngest as well. I don't know about you, James. So that sort of resonated, and she was like, I just need to get over that. Like my clients need me to get over that, and I need me to get over that. And it was just like different little things like that. Was just like, oh yeah, like
we don't need to live in these forms that other people have made for us, or even that we've made for ourselves.
I think and it's also recognizing that, you know, those stories that we live by are things we help author or we keep hold of as well, like and that we can live by a different story.
Like we can choose to rewrite it. Actually, it's in our power. I like that, because that kind of connects to CBT and the scripts thing and the life scripts. And it always frustrated me so much with CBT that, you know, you'd learn about your life script so that you didn't have to always follow them, or if you did, then you could kind of like help yourself afterwards. But there didn't seem to be any way to change it, and I was like, well, this seems really futile and bleak. I want to know that I'm doomed to be this way all my life. I want to change. So actually, I guess I have always wanted the power. I guess there's part of me that's always been afraid of it, and probably still is. I say probably, definitely still is. But yeah, that's good. I like that, the ability to rewrite it and choose. And
it's like like I like you what we're saying, I don't know. Maybe what's happening in supervision is that I'm slowly writing a different story. And it's like the events meant that I wanted to go a different way. And it's like, this is what I'm doing in supervision, is trying to write that different way. And of course that's can be slow, and like it's also like, oh, that's also part of the old story, and what do I do with that? Like, it's becoming aware of lots of things, and like a whole new story to live by has ramifications in many different domains. So it's kind of okay, that domain and that domain, and
stuff you don't realize at the beginning.
But I like, it's life. I think I'm excited by it as well. Like life feels more exciting because I have control, like not control over everything, but it's like, well, I do have some impact here on my own life.
So you're suddenly like an active participant rather than a passive observer. That's really good.
We should probably leave it there, I feel, James.
Probably should. Tom, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Really.
No, thank you for asking. It's
lovely. That's good.
Yeah,
Terrifying.
it's
but good.
terrifying and
Terrifying,
exciting.
terrifying because it means a cop probably got stuff to do, which you might have known already.
Yeah,
What's your
yeah.
Lovely.
And I think a big part of that, I think, which links to the supervision, but it's also like it's bringing people around you that can help you work that out too.
Yes,
You
yeah,
know,
you
like
mentioned that before. Yeah,
um,
about having team and like the right environment and the right people.
yeah, like it doesn't that all of that personal power doesn't negate the need for a support or a team or something. Like it's yeah. Anyway, thank you, James, for
Thank
asking the
you, Tom.
question, and
That's great.
hopefully others may find it helpful as well.
Yeah.
And
Well, I did.
it's been useful then.
It's been very useful.
We don't care about you, listener. You can do whatever you think. It's
Do
been
whatever you
useful
like.
to us.
I have found it very fruitful, so that has been worth speaking about. Very worth.
Great. Thank you, James, and
Thank you,
take
Tom.
care, everyone.